December 25, 1989. Christmas Day in a cold military barracks yard outside Târgoviște, Romania. Nicolae Ceaușescu, the man who ruled Romania with absolute power for 24 years, stood against a wall with his wife Elena. He had built a cult of personality as the genius of the Carpathians, controlled a secret police that watched every citizen, and turned the country into his personal empire. But everything changed in a matter of days. What most people don't know is how quickly it all crumbled. Captured after fleeing Bucharest by helicopter, the couple faced a hasty trial. Hands tied behind their backs, faces pale and bewildered. Nicolae, in a dark coat, began singing the Internationale. Elena screamed, "You sons of bitches." Bullets ripped through them at 2:50 p.m. Their bodies slumped, blood pooling on the frozen ground. The footage of their execution and lifeless corpses would leak within days, shocking the world. Nicolae Ceaușescu was born on January 26, 1918, in the poor village of Scornășesti. The third of 9 or 10 children in a peasant family, he knew hunger early. His father owned just 3 hectares of land and a few sheep. At age 11, Nicolae left for Bucharest to work as a shoemaker's apprentice. Life in the city was brutal, but he found purpose in the illegal Communist Party, joining in 1932 as a teenager. He faced repeated arrests and prison time for his activities. In Doftana prison, harsh conditions and alleged beatings left him with a lifelong stutter. There, he met George Dage, who became his mentor. This was a humanizing moment of vulnerability for the young man shaped by poverty and repression. But the system rewarded his worst qualities. Instead of learning compassion, Ceaușescu absorbed ruthless discipline and loyalty to the party above all. Elena Petrescu, born in 1916 into a modest family, met Nicolae in 1939. She had limited education but joined the communist movement. They married in 1946. Elena rose alongside him, later claiming scientific credentials she didn't earn. By the end of World War II, as Romania fell under Soviet influence, Ceaușescu climbed the ranks. He served as secretary of the Union of Communist Youth and held key posts in agriculture and the armed forces. But the first sign of darkness appeared early. What most people don't know is how prison forged not just a survivor, but a man who would later imprison his own people on a massive scale. The machinery of communism, with its emphasis on control and ideology over individual lives, perfectly suited his ambition and paranoia. George Dage died on March 19, 1965. Ceaușescu, seen as a compromise candidate, became General Secretary of the Romanian Communist Party on March 22. By 1967, he was also head of state. He positioned himself as a nationalist, distancing Romania from strict Soviet control. He condemned the 1968 invasion of Czechoslovakia, winning praise in the West. Power consolidated quickly. In 1974, he created the position of President of Romania. Elena gained enormous influence, heading the National Council of Science and Technology and receiving honors despite questionable qualifications. The couple built a personality cult. Nicolae was hailed as the genius of the Carpathians. Portraits hung everywhere. Songs and poems praised them. The system enabled them. The Securitate secret police expanded into a vast network. Rumors suggested 1 in 4 Romanians informed for them. Dissent meant surveillance, job loss, or worse. Ceaușescu pursued independent foreign policy but tightened domestic control. By the 1970s, he borrowed heavily for industrialization. When debts mounted, he repaid them ruthlessly by exporting food while Romanians starved. Rationing began. Electricity was limited to a few hours daily. Heat in winter became a luxury. Each step made the next inevitable. Nationalist pride masked growing repression. The cult demanded total obedience. Elena's role grew, making her one of the most powerful and unpopular women in the Eastern Bloc. By the 1980s, Romania isolated itself further as other communist states reformed. Ceaușescu rejected Gorbachev's changes. The machinery of control, Securitate, propaganda, economic central planning, fed on itself. Shortages worsened. Queues for bread stretched for hours. Yet the couple lived in luxury, building the massive palace of the parliament, one of the largest buildings in the world, while the people suffered. The true scale of suffering under the Ceaușescus was staggering. In 1966, Decree 770 banned abortion and contraception for most women to boost the population. Women under 40 with fewer than 4 or 5 children faced strict limits. Menstrual police inspected workplaces. Doctors reported pregnancies. The result was catastrophic. Over the next 2 decades, around 10,000 Romanian women died from unsafe, illegal abortions. Maternal mortality rates tripled at times. Hospitals saw wards filled with women bleeding from botched procedures using crude methods like knitting needles or chemicals. Many survivors faced infertility or lifelong health problems. One survivor later said, "We lived in terror of pregnancy. It wasn't joy, it was fear for our lives and our existing children's futures." Unwanted children flooded state institutions. By 1989, an estimated 170,000 children lived in over 700 orphanages. Many were not true orphans but abandoned due to poverty caused by the regime. Conditions were horrifying. Children were often tied to beds, underfed, and neglected. According to later investigations, more than 15,000 minors died in these facilities from neglect, disease, and abuse. HIV infection spread through dirty needles. In some places, over half the children tested positive. Food exports left shelves empty. In the 1980s, calorie intake dropped dangerously. People foraged or relied on black markets. One court record from the era noted widespread malnutrition-related deaths. The Securitate enforced silence. Jokes about the leader could lead to arrest. According to survivor testimony, you couldn't trust anyone. Even family members informed to save themselves. In Timișoara on December 17, 1989, security forces opened fire on protesters. At least 97 died in the initial crackdown. Bodies were hidden. But news spread. Ceaușescu ordered more force. Unknown to many at the time, the regime had prepared for mass repression. The Securitate's files later revealed plans for widespread detentions. Elena Ceaușescu played a key role. She demanded honors as a scientist, faking credentials. Factories and labs bore her name. Meanwhile, real science suffered. The cult extended to absurd lengths. Nicolae claimed descent from ancient Romans. Schools taught children to revere the couple daily. But the reality was different. In Bucharest, the Palace of the People consumed vast resources, over 700 architects and 20,000 workers, while villages were demolished for systematization projects that displaced thousands. A shocking statistic, Romania's foreign debt was paid off by 1989 through extreme austerity, but at the cost of human lives. Infant mortality soared. Life expectancy stagnated. According to documents, the regime prioritized exports over domestic needs, leading to documented cases of scurvy and rickets in children. One eyewitness from an orphanage recalled, the children rocked back and forth for hours. There was no touch, no love, just rows of metal cribs. The repression machine ran on fear. An estimated hundreds of thousands passed through Securitate interrogation centers over the years. Torture methods included beatings, psychological abuse, and isolation. Dissidents disappeared. Families received urns with ashes and vague explanations. Ceaușescu himself once declared in a speech that the fetus belonged to society, justifying the policies that destroyed so many lives. By the late 1980s, the system was collapsing under its own weight. Shortages of everything from medicine to fuel created desperation. Yet the couple toured the country in luxury cars, waving to carefully staged crowds. The horror was not random cruelty but the logical outcome of total control, centralized power, demographic engineering, surveillance state, and cult of personality all feeding one another. This footage leaked quickly. Romanians and the world saw the dead dictator and his wife, proof the nightmare was over. Their bodies were taken away, eventually buried in a simple grave. In those final seconds, the all-powerful couple who ruled 23 million people reduced to two frail figures against a wall. No grand exit. Just fear, anger, and sudden violence, the same tools they had used for decades turned against them. The images of their bodies circulated globally. A dictator who promised equality left his country in ruins, its people scarred for generations. What does it say about power that a man who rose from a shoemaker's bench could orchestrate such suffering, only to die begging for dignity on Christmas Day? The system he perfected consumed him in the end. And the uncomfortable truth remains, the machinery of total control can rise again, anywhere, whenever fear and promises of greatness seduce enough people. History doesn't end with one execution. It waits.